Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guests are the director and stars of the new film, After the Wedding, a beautifully woven story about secrets, grief, inequality, and the good a person can do both close to home and far away. Let's take a look.
With your imagination, you can create anything.
Where's the food, the beds? We were promised school supplies.
They want you to go meet with them in New York. They want you to give us millions of dollars.
I'm not coming back without a suitcase full of money.
You must be Isabel.
Yes.
I'm Theresa.
So nice to meet you.
So we have a list of priorities.
I have the caterers on the line.
I'm really sorry about that. You just caught me at a very busy time. My daughter's getting married this weekend. Come to the wedding. We can get to know each other better.
I pronounce you husband and wife. Congratulations.
Everybody smile.
Hi, good, you made it.
Isabel runs an orphanage in India that I'm thinking of funding.
Oh,
Yeah.
what are you doing here?
I didn't know. Hi.
Isabel, right?
I told you that I would call you.
But you didn't.
This is strange to see Oscar again. He's a good-looking man now, but back then, it must have really been something. I'm about to donate a small fortune to the orphanage Isabel runs in India.
I don't trust your wife.
She's gonna give you money for your charity and you're gonna question her integrity, huh?
20 million. What does she want?
You know that you're not the only one affected by this, right?
We don't get to choose.
You tell her or I will.
I want to know everything.
What did you do?
Everybody, please put your hands together from After the Wedding. Billy Crudup, Abby Quinn, Julianne Moore, and writer-director Bart Freundlich. Sorry. Let's start off with a bang. Guys, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for this wonderful film. I can't compliment you enough on the performances and on the, this is maybe a weird compliment, but on your restraint as a director. One of the things that I loved about the movie so much was how restrained everything is until these final moments. We're building and building and building, and you're cutting away at very specific points to sort of leave us wanting these big climactic cathartic blowouts, which you handle with such care as performers. What made the two of you, I know you produced it, Julianne, what made the two of you want to remake After the Wedding and gender swap the roles and bring this to the States?
Well, the original is by Suzanne Bier, this unbelievable Danish filmmaker, and it's such an intricate exploration of these characters and these relationships, but you don't usually see that stuff paired with big plot. You know, you usually kind of get one or the other. It's a character piece or it's a big narrative, and this kind of had both. So I was
extremely melodramatic.
It's extremely which speaks to your point about restraint. It felt like there were so many big things that were happening in the story that part of what we really wanted to do was keep it very naturalistic and camera-wise really just be objective, to let the story play out and to not be like pushing in on someone's face and saying, this is the moment to pay attention to. Just let everyone kind of take it in the way they wanted to take it in.
Even this is going to be kind of hard to talk about because for those who haven't seen the original film, there are a lot of twists and turns, and I don't want to spoil anything, but a wonderful example of what you're talking about is when Billy and Julianne are with Michelle Williams in the kitchen, and that scene could suddenly explode, and there's a minor explosion on your part, and you immediately restrain yourself, look in the other room, and then the scene kind of ends for the most part after there, and we don't necessarily see the rest of the explosion. How do you do that as a director? Because you have so much there. You have three incredible performers who can handle that scene no matter where it goes. But how do you as a director know, like, okay, it'd be best if we really just pull it back here?
I think the challenge is always, especially with a movie like this, there's so much information you need, but you don't want the exposition to feel clunky and take over. So it was in those, we rehearsed a bit, and I got to hear their feedback about dialogue. which was very, very valuable about what sounded natural. And the challenge was like, how little could I give you and still have you get the story? Because all of these actors say so much in their silence. So that was something I was really conscious about, and our cinematographer Julio Macat was very conscious of going in. Like, we just have to service them. Once I wrote the script, and the big difference was this gender switch. Once it was kind of reinvented in that way, then we just went forward knowing restraint was what we were looking for all the time.
It's not just reinvented as well because you're switching the genders. I think also your performance is very, very different than the man of the original, and your take on the character. She's far more sympathetic, and as much as she may be early on, where she's coming from is questionable at times, we still get a very good read on that she's, in her heart, genuinely a very good person.
I was fascinated by the original. The actor who played is named Rolf Lassgard, and he had a scale to his performance and an opacity at the same time, and it was really intriguing. And that was something that I thought a lot about when we switched the genders. Like, how do I bring that from a female perspective? And what was interesting about her too is that you don't see characters like this represented very often on screen. Someone who has built a company from the ground up, who's a very successful business person, and is equally invested in her family and has built this wonderful, successful, loving family. And so she's trying to, the fact that she has all of this and has controlled everything in her life up to this point, and is now facing this one thing that she can't control. That's her dilemma. And how do you present that without having a tell as well?
Well, of course, because that thing that she can't control is not going to be revealed until much later. And there's so many assumptions that we have to make about her as a person right from the opening shot of her cutting from an orphanage in India to her singing Lady Gaga, like, I Am Strong.
Big gas guzzling car.
Yeah, pulling up to her mansion in Connecticut somewhere. So we immediately make assumptions about who she is based off of her wealth and inequality, and it's your job as a performer to sort of subvert those assumptions as the film progresses.
Yeah, correct. And I think I also love the judgment that Isabel and Theresa levy against each other. They both feel that they're coming from the right place empirically, and they really are in a struggle for dominance, in a lot of the scenes, and that also was very unusual for me to see on screen.
What's interesting is they are both coming from the right place, but because they don't have all the information about each other, they assume that they're coming from very different places.
Right, and the way that I think because we do judge one another based on initial assumptions, and I'm interested in that, and how gradually, as you become closer to someone or something, you begin to understand it, and I think that's what this film reveals.
Well, and that's what's so great about film in general. I think it's you see how people present themselves to the world, and then you can see their private internal lives expressed as well. So you get to see both of those things. And that's kind of that's the slow burn of this film, is figuring out who these people are on the inside. So by the end, you feel like you know them and you're with them.
One thing that I love about your performance, Billy, is that he's just a good guy. And for the most part, he has this secret, but even that he kind of handles quite well when the time comes to handle it. There's no... oftentimes in stories like this, characters will do the wrong thing just for the service of the plot, and your character does not do that. What is it like to just play a pretty good guy who's trying to keep control of everything?
I have to tell you, it's super fun.
Yeah.
It's really nice to not have all the mess of my own mind in a character who finds himself in such a stable place in theirs. And for Oscar, I think he has convinced himself over time that the choices that he made, as difficult as they were, as complex as they were, as heartbreaking as they were and confusing, were the right decision. And he followed through with being a diligent father and being a loving husband and trying to be a creative artist in the community. And so every feature of his life speaks to a kind of stability, which is so fun to play. The kind of confidence that you have when you're somebody who's grounded is kind of unfamiliar to me. I feel
it's kind of an odd male fantasy to be a person like that, right? Who strives it, rolls into every situation, is like, I am the dad and I have this under control.
Exactly. It's an unusual expression of masculinity too. You don't see that expression of masculinity with the kind of quiet confidence and loving care that he has for his family, that I thought was a wonderful place to start, because, of course, naturally then, the history as told through his daughter, so beautifully played by Abby, comes back with a different perspective, and it shows him his own lack of ability foresight. He couldn't see the ramifications and the potential chaos from the choices that he made a long time ago, and that's kind of heartbreaking, to see somebody who is so in charge of their life and so happy, thinking they're doing the right thing, see it be deconstructed by the people that he's been attending to.
It's one of the downsides of men like that, in a way. It's like very in control of the moment and taking care of this. And if someone says, well, what about what happens in 5 years from now? Like, no. I got this right now.
Let's stay present right here. I'm pretty sure this is all under control. There's no reason to worry about the future, and then the future arrives.
And Billy's always saying, and you said that he's believed his own story,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of us do that just to get through the day. It's not an easy thing to be a human being and in a social world, much less live in New York. We have to get along, and so part of it is telling your story that you're right. I mean, when I get into an argument with somebody on the street, we're both convinced we're right as hell until the moment we look at each other like, my bad, no, you're right, okay. There's always a competition to come into conflict with people's own version of the reality and truth. And I think one thing that makes us all get along is the appreciation that we all probably have slightly different stories, and that we can still get along without having to believe everybody else's.
Abby, you have a number of wonderful scenes in the film, but you have a really heartbreaking scene with Julianne at one point. I'm wondering what it was like to shoot that scene with her and to go to that place.
Well, it was my second day of shooting, and I was pretty nervous, but I got to read through the script at Bart and Julie's house a couple days before, and I maybe they could.
Did they know you were there?
I don't know. They were talking.
Snuck in. We had no idea.
And Julie told me to think of, when it's written on the page that I'm supposed to get to a place emotionally, to think of that as more of a guideline and to not force it, I guess, which took the pressure off of me. And yeah, it was in a way a nice way to start, because that was one of the hardest scenes going into it. But I got that out of the way, and yeah, it was a nice place to start, I think.
There's so much emotional. There's so many emotional reveals in this movie, and that as we went through it to try to schedule how we would shoot it, there was no good place to start. Right. Every location had some massive emotional scene, and Abby got the short end of the stick. She rose to the occasion, and there was some logic behind it that I can't remember right now, but it really was kind of stunning to watch that. Day 2 to see that happen, or it might have been day 2 or 3, you realize you had something that special that you could work towards, kind of reverse engineer now.
Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Well, just that it's such an important moment in the film, and these two we haven't shot the rest of their relationship. So understanding, for me at least as a director, understanding where it was going, I kind of understood what we needed beforehand to most effectively build toward it. Especially establishing this loving relationship between them, so when this emotional scene comes up, it can be that much more heartbreaking.
When did you two shoot your emotional scene?
It was near the end.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we had already moved out because we shot in Manhattan and then Oyster Bay and then in India.
Yeah.
So it was the end of the Oyster Bay part. Yeah, the usual places. Yeah.
Within that
Bermuda
scene,
Triangle, I think they call it.
Within that scene, I don't want to be too personal or anything, but you two are married. I can't help but ask what it's like to direct your wife doing a scene like that. I mean, I was heartbroken for my partner, and my partner was not performing in the scene. I was like, oh my God, that would be so terrible.
Yeah, that was hard. I think it was hard for everyone to watch. It's like, honestly, I have never seen someone perform a scene like that on film. I've seen emotional stuff, very effective, but this was at sort of another level. the cinematographer actually took his eye out of the eyepiece and it was just dripping into it. I think it didn't matter so much in directing the scene that we were married.
Yeah, we don't care.
We don't care about that. We don't?
We don't care, yeah.
We don't. We don't care.
You go to work, you leave your feelings at home.
That's right,
what you
just
do.
That's right.
Drop it. Yeah.
But what was good is the fact that we lived together. We had almost no pre-production except when Abby snuck into our house to read the script. But
Sorry about that.
But so Julie and I got to talk about all this stuff on all of our drives to and from set. And that made a big difference. So I understood what she needed. I asked her a lot what she needed out of that. Was it okay to shoot this other scene that day beforehand? This is where it would be in the script. Was there anything else she needed? So, but other than that, the hard part was watching the dailies. I didn't really watch those dailies. I watched just to see the one take that I knew was really the one I thought was great, or the best. And then I kind of let the editor take it, and we didn't actually readdress that scene ever and recut it, like fine-tune it until way at the end because it was so painful to watch. Yeah.
That is a scene. You're an incredible performer all around, but you are also one of cinema's great criers. I hope you take that as a compliment. Like, my
T-shirt.
My first experience with you as an actress was in Boogie Nights, and the scene outside of the courthouse. Like, I didn't know an actor could cry like that on film. I remember being just like heartbroken in that moment. Is there something that you recognized about yourself and being able to do that more authentically than other performers in some way?
Well, I certainly don't feel that I do it more authentically than anybody else, but I really don't. But I do think that there are different kinds of emotion, and where they're expressed is really important to the scale of it. And so, in this movie and in Boogie Nights, and the places where you have large emotional moments in films, often they're more effective when they're a private expression, because that's really when we are most emotional. And because in most other circumstances, I'm uncomfortable sometimes when you just see somebody like crying through a scene where it's very public, because most people try not to cry. We're actually ashamed of those feelings and we're always suppressing them. But when we finally let go, we're usually alone or we're with an intimate partner, and it's a huge release. So that, I think that's the key sometimes, is knowing what, where it is emotionally. Because sometimes, that's what I had said to Abby, when you see something marked in a script, you're like, well, you don't know where that comes and why it comes. And so it's not, I think actors sometimes feel like they have to build up to crying, when really it's like the suppression of this feeling until you can no longer suppress it.
Is that something that you found over the course of your career, or very early on in your character studies, you discovered that that's something that works for you and is the most, maybe you don't like this word, the most authentic for you?
Right. Yes. Well, that's the thing, exactly. What is the most authentic for you? And they talk about that in training all the time, about like, who knows what'll work for you, and you're kind of given a lot of different kinds of techniques, but you have to find out what's meaningful to you. And my God, it takes a really long time to figure this stuff out.
And it changes. It changes as we change over
Yeah.
time. So what was authentic to me at 26 isn't authentic to me at 40. You can't rely on it at 50. There are new things that are authentic to me, that are foreign, that are now natural to me as a 50-year-old man, or 51.
I hate to put you on the spot. Do you have like an example of that? As like a 26-year-old, like a thing that you would have reached for?
Yeah, sure. Like hubris was super easy when I was 26. And right now, anxiety and shame is like right there.
There you go. Or research too. Oh my God. When I was first starting out, I thought, I don't need to do research. I know this. It's there in the script. It's all right there. And now I'm just going to make it up. I use my imagination.
Sure.
And now
I'll give them that look.
That's right. But now I'm like, oh my God, if I haven't, it's like I do so much now. I look at references. I ask people questions. I feel like I don't know anything at all.
So interesting, because I always thought the it was the reverse for actors often, where when you're young, you pour yourself into the part no matter who's making it, and you do all the research.
It's not my experience.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, you also do in the same way that you become more invested in something, and it's like the closer you look, the more details you are, the more fascinated you become with those details. And also you have more agency as an actor, so you have access to more things. So I think it actually becomes more complex in a lot of ways and fascinating in that way, but also then you realize how much you don't know about the human experience, about yourself as an actor, and about as yourself as a collaborator. This is the third time that we've worked together, Julie and Bart and I, and still discovering new things about how we relate and contribute creatively to create an event. And so that's exciting and infuriating.
Infuriating. I mean, that's got to be really special collaborating for a third time, in the sense that you know what you're going to get on set and how Bart may approach a scene and how it's going to sort of come out at the end of the day. And
well, it's funny because you do in some ways, but then Bart's evolved in the span of time that we haven't been working together. I've evolved in my own way in the span of time. And so it does take a second to kind of catch up and go, all right, how are we working together now? In fact, you take for granted that you worked the same way you worked together on the last film we did, which was this kind of, hijinks comedy. So there's a very different experience. And you take for granted, because we're so close and have such close personal relationships, that the working relationship will be the same. But what is easy is you have the level of trust in one another that makes that growth process a lot easier and less painful.
I think what happens is it becomes much less about ego. And much more just about how are we going to service this story. Mm-hmm. And certainly the personal part of it is great, because I do know or have an instinct for how they like to work. And my first film where Julie and I met on The Myth of Fingerprints, there were 10 actors in it, from like Roy Scheider, Blythe Danner, Julie, Hope Davis, Noah Wiley. They all wanted different things. I mean, I learned very quickly, this person wants to know their backstory. This person wants to just know where to stand. This person needs to talk about motivation, and this
what did Julianne want?
She was the I want to know where to stand, where you'd like me. I tried to contrive some reason why she was going to leave her keys near the door so she could go a long way around the table, and she's like, so you don't want me to pass under that light? I was like, yes, that's what I'm saying. She's like, got it. You can just tell me that.
So you're not? Are you not a big question asker on sets? You've done your own work and your own research.
Yeah. I mean, if there's something I don't understand in the script, I always ask a question. And like I said, I really want to understand it before I get there. But I don't need. If it's technical, I don't need an emotional reason to do something. You can tell me how to do the cross, and I'll be fine.
You're a producer on this film, and you also executive produced Gloria Bell last year, which is a wonderful film as well. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you also produced a documentary that is being released by...
I did not produce a documentary.
Oh, excuse me.
No, I didn't. I'm really just an advocate for it.
You're an advocate for a documentary
so
that Verizon Media is distributing, called 5B. Can you talk about why you're an advocate for it, how you came across it?
They sent me the doc, and I watched it, and it really brought so much back to me about being a young person when I first moved to New York in the early '80s. It was the AIDS epidemic was just beginning, and it was so. When I knew people who died, they were still calling it gay cancer, or I knew someone who had died. He'd been to Mexico, and they said he caught the Mexican flu and died in 2 weeks. We really didn't know. This was like 1985. So these nurses in this ward in San Francisco General, it was the first all AIDS ward in the world, and this was at a time where they didn't know how you could be infected. There were no drugs. There was no cure. If you did become infected, they assumed that you would die. They set up this compassionate care ward where people were treated with love and true care. I mean, and they're so heroic, these people. I met a lot of them on the red carpet in Cannes, and I was so impressed. And it's wonderful to be able to talk about the kind of selfless work that these people did.
Absolutely. We have time for a question from the audience. Who has a question?
Hey guys, great to meet you all. So Julianne, you were obviously in the movie and then you also produced it. And as someone who one day wants to wear both hats, I was wondering how you like kind of traversed both grounds, especially when the work you had to do as an actor was so complex and I would think like demanding.
Well, I have to say, you know, I mean, Bart and I produced it together. We were partners, and I think that the reason that we decided to do this for the first time, because I've always only been involved as an actor, was that I've over the years built up a series of lots of relationships. So when you're making an independent film, you really have to call in a lot of favors. So because I have access to people and emails, I would be the one to be like, hey, you know, I know you have this restaurant. Would you take this tiny bit of money that we have for this location? And they'd say like, hey, you know, we're okay on Tuesday afternoons. Why don't you do that? And I was the one who emailed Michelle because I'm another actor and I feel like I can exploit that relationship a little bit. So that's what producers do sometimes, you know.
You've been in movies together before, but never really
never in the
scenes,
same
right?
scene. Yeah, we were playing characters in different parts of the movie. So this is our first time together. But yeah, so it really was about using those relationships and then working as a creative partner to Bart sometimes, and you know, being a sounding board and kind of nudging things along. But I don't know that I came, like I said, I've always been an actor, and this producing thing is really, really recent, and it's a result of my experiences as an actor.
Guys, I love the film. Congratulations. It premieres this Thursday, right? Tomorrow?
It opens Friday.
It opens Friday,
Friday the
excuse
9th,
me.
yeah.
It's called After the Wedding. Everybody, please give them a huge round of applause for being here. Let's hear it.